A billionaire father offered an expensive gift to the poor girl, but she refused and asked for something that made him cry. Warren Blake looked out the car window and sighed. The same route, every day, the same scenery, skyscrapers, designer stores, expensive restaurants, everything perfect, everything predictable, everything boring. "Michael, turn left here," he said suddenly. The driver frowned in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Blake, this isn't the usual route." "I know, that's the point." Michael obeyed without question. The car glided through streets Warren hadn't seen in years. Maybe he had never seen them. Simpler neighborhoods, smaller houses, modest shops. None of it was part of his world, but that afternoon, for some reason he didn't understand himself, he wanted to see something different, something real. They passed by a small park, old trees, worn wooden benches, a rusty playground. Warren was about to look away when he saw her, a little girl sitting alone on the ground near a bed of withered flowers. She must have been about 5 years old, messy blonde hair, light eyes fixed on the ground. She wore a faded t-shirt and mended shorts. Around her, no toys, just stones. She would pick up a stone, examine it carefully, and place it to the side. Pick up another, repeat the motion, as if that were enough. Warren felt a strange pang in his chest. "Stop the car!" Michael hit the brakes. "Sir, just stop!" The car pulled over to the side of the park. Warren got out unhurriedly, adjusting his suit. He didn't know exactly what he was doing, but his feet were already carrying him toward the girl. She didn't notice him at first. She continued playing, arranging the stones in crooked rows. Warren stopped a few feet away, watching. There was something about it that bothered him. It wasn't pity. It was something else, something he couldn't name. "Hi," he said, softening his voice. The girl looked up, huge blue eyes. She didn't seem scared, just curious. "Hi," she answered quietly. Warren took another step and crouched down to her level. "What's your name?" "Josie." "Josie, that's a pretty name." He smiled. "What are you doing?" "Playing." "With stones," she nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Warren looked around. No adults nearby, no guardian. That bothered him even more. "Where's your mum?" "At home. She can't go out." "Why not?" Josie shrugged. "She gets tired." Warren felt the unease grow. He wasn't the type to get involved. He wasn't the type to stop on the street to talk to children. But something about this girl kept him there. "Do you like playing with stones?" he asked, trying to keep the conversation light. "I do. They're all different. Each one has a different shape." He looked at the stones. They were just stones, but to her they were the whole world. Warren stood up and took his wallet from his pocket. He looked across the park and saw a toy store on the other side of the street. Small, simple, but it was open. "Wait here," he said. Josie just watched as Warren crossed the street. He entered the store and scanned the place. Dolls, cars, stuffed animals. All cheap, but colorful. He picked up the most expensive doll he could find. Blonde hair, pink dress, eyes that blinked. He paid and went back. Josie was still in the same spot, as if she hadn't moved an inch. Warren crouched down again and held out the doll. "For you." The girl's eyes widened. She looked at the doll, then at Warren, then back at the doll. But she didn't take it. "You can take it," he insisted, smiling. "It's yours." Josie shook her head slowly. "I don't want it." Warren blinked, confused. "You don't want it, but it's a beautiful doll. Look, it even blinks." "I know, but I don't want it." He stood there, holding the doll in the air like an idiot. No child he knew ever refused a gift. Sophie, his daughter, barely said thank you before asking for the next one. "Why not?" he asked, genuinely curious now. Josie looked down at her own hands. "I'd rather have food." Warren felt as if he'd been punched. "Food," she nodded. "For my mom, she's hungry." The silence that followed was heavy. Warren stayed there, crouched, holding a useless doll, while a 5-year-old child told him she preferred food to toys. He felt his eyes sting. He blinked, trying to hold it back, but he couldn't. A tear ran down his face, then another. He quickly turned his face away, wiping it with the back of his hand. Josie tilted her head, confused. "Is the man crying?" Warren cleared his throat, forcing a smile. "No, it's just..." Dust in my eye, but they both knew it wasn't. He took a deep breath and put the doll back in the bag. He stood up, holding out his hand to Josie. "Come with me. Let's buy some food for your mom." The girl's eyes lit up. "Really? Really? But you're going to help me choose?" Josie took his hand without hesitation, her small, dirty hand wrapped around Warren's fingers with confidence. He felt that tightness in his chest again. They walked along the sidewalk to a diner on the corner. The place was simple, the air smelling of fried food, plastic tables, a menu handwritten on a chalkboard. Warren had never set foot in a place like this. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with a stained apron, looked at them curiously. A man in an expensive suit with a barefoot, dirty little girl. It must have looked strange. "What can I get for you?" she asked. Warren looked at Josie. "Choose whatever you want." "For you and your mum?" Josie stood on her tiptoes, trying to see the menu. "Can I have a hamburger?" "You can have whatever you want. 2 hamburgers then, and juice." "Is that all?" Warren smiled. "Are you sure?" Josie bit her lip, thinking, "French fries too." "Of course." The waitress wrote down the order, still looking at the two of them strangely. "Anything else?" Warren asked. Josie shook her head. "That's enough. My mum will like it." Warren turned to the waitress. "Make that 2 of everything, and add some sandwiches, fruit, some sweets. Whatever you have that's good. Put it in." The woman raised her eyebrows. "That's going to be a lot of food." "That's fine." They sat at a table near the window. Josie swung her legs, which didn't reach the floor. She looked around with curious eyes, as if she were in a magical place. "Do you come here often?" Warren asked. She shook her head. "I've never been here." "Never?" "We don't have money to eat out." Warren swallowed hard. Every sentence from that little girl was a slap in the face of the reality he ignored every day. "And what do you eat at home?" Josie shrugged. "Sometimes there's rice, sometimes there's nothing." He felt the tears coming back, but this time he managed to hold them in. He took a deep breath. "Your mum, is she sick?" Josie nodded. "She stays in bed all day, says she's tired, but I think it's more than that." The waitress brought the trays. Big hamburgers, golden French fries, glasses of orange juice. Josie's eyes widened. All this, Warren confirmed. "Eat up." She picked up the hamburger with both hands and took a bite. Her eyes closed in pleasure. She chewed slowly, savoring every piece. Warren just watched, not touching his own food. "Is it good?" he asked. Josie nodded with her mouth full. She swallowed and smiled. "It's really good. My mum is going to love it. You're not going to eat hers, are you?" "No. This one is mine. The other one is hers." Warren smiled. Even hungry, even having so little, Josie thought of her mother first. They stayed there for a few more minutes. Josie ate with gusto, drank all the juice, even licked her fingers. Warren barely touched his food, but he didn't mind. Seeing that little girl happy was enough. When they finished, the waitress brought 2 large bags, everything packed carefully. Warren paid and handed the bags to Josie. "Can you carry these?" "I can," she said, excited. They left the diner. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange. Josie held the bags tightly as if they were treasures. "Thank you, mister," she said, looking up at Warren with those huge blue eyes. "You're welcome, Josie." He crouched down again, getting to her level. "So you take good care of your mum, okay?" "I do." "I know you do." Josie took a step forward and, without warning, hugged Warren, a quick but genuine hug. He was paralyzed for a second, then put his hand on her shoulder. When she pulled away, she was smiling, a huge, grateful smile. "Bye, rich mister." "Bye, Josie." She started walking, carrying the bags with difficulty. Every few steps, she would stop to adjust the weight, but she didn't let go of anything. She kept going, firm, determined. Warren stood there on the sidewalk, watching until she disappeared around the corner. Michael was leaning against the car, waiting. "So how shall we go, sir?" Warren nodded but said nothing. He got into the car and rested his head against the cool glass. His mind was stuck in that park, on that girl, on those stones, on that answer. "I'd rather have food." He had offered what he thought every child wanted, But Josie wasn't like other children. She didn't want toys. She wanted to take care of her mum. Warren closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't pity. It was an awakening. Josie climbed the stairs carefully. The bags were heavy, but she wasn't going to drop them. She couldn't. Inside them was the solution for the day, maybe for the next day too. The apartment door was unlocked. It always was. There was nothing to steal anyway. "Mom," she called, pushing the door with her shoulder. "Mom, look." The apartment was small, a living room that barely fit an old couch, a kitchen with a broken stove, a bedroom where they both slept. The walls had damp stains. The floor was cold. But it was their home. Diana was lying on the couch, covered with a thin blanket. She turned her head slowly when she heard her daughter come in. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her face pale, her eyes sunken. But still, she smiled. "Josie, where were you?" Josie dropped the bags on the floor and ran to her mother. "At the park. But look what I brought." Diana tried to sit up, but the effort was too much. Josie helped, placing a pillow behind her mother's back. "What is this?" Diana asked, looking at the bags. "Food." Josie opened the bags with excitement. "A man bought it for us. There's a hamburger, French fries, juice, sandwiches, a lot of stuff." Diana's eyes widened. She looked at the bags, then at her daughter, then back at the bags. "A man? What man, Josie?" "A rich man. He was wearing a suit and everything. He saw me at the park and wanted to give me a doll, but I said I'd rather have food. Then he took me to a diner and bought all this." Diana's eyes widened. "He took you to a diner?" "He did. And he was very nice, Mom. I liked him. He even cried when I said you were hungry." Diana felt her heart clench. She reached out and caressed her daughter's face. "He cried?" "He did. I think he's really a good person. And look, he even bought dessert." Josie took one of the hamburgers from the bag and placed it on her mother's lap. The smell of food filled the apartment. Diana looked at the hamburger as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Josie," her voice failed. "How lucky we are." "I know, Mom." Diana felt her own eyes sting. She picked up the hamburger with trembling hands and looked at her daughter. "You were very smart today," Josie smiled. "I learned from you, Mom." Diana couldn't hold it in. Tears streamed down her face. She pulled Josie into a tight hug. "My girl, my little girl." Josie hugged her mother back, confused by the tears, but happy to be there. "Don't cry, Mom. Now we have food." Diana let go of her daughter and wiped her face with the back of her hand. She looked at the hamburger, then at Josie. "So let's eat together then." Josie smiled and grabbed her own hamburger. They sat side by side on the couch, the bags scattered on the floor. Diana took the first bite and closed her eyes. It had been days since she had eaten something hot, something real. "Is it good, Mom?" Diana nodded, swallowing slowly. "It's very good." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Josie chewed with gusto, swinging her legs. Diana ate slowly, savoring every piece. She knew this was more than food. It was dignity. It was hope. "Mom," Josie broke the silence. The man asked why you didn't leave the house. Diana stopped chewing. "And what did you say?" "I said you get tired. But I think you're really sick." Diana placed the hamburger on her lap and looked at her daughter. Josie was only 5, but she understood more than she should. "I'm getting treatment, sweetie. I'm just a little weak." "But you're going to get better, right?" Diana forced a smile. "I will, I promise." Josie seemed satisfied with the answer and went back to eating. Diana looked at her daughter with a heavy heart. She wanted to give that girl everything. She wanted her to play with real toys, to eat every day, to not have to worry about anything. But reality was different, and Diana knew it. "Josie, you were very brave today, very smart." Josie smiled, proud. "I know." They went back to eating. Diana took small bites, trying to make it last. Josie ate everything quickly and then started exploring the other things in the bags. There were sandwiches, fruit, sweets, more than they had seen in weeks. "Can we save this for tomorrow?" Josie asked. "We can. We'll save it very carefully." Josie nodded and started organizing the food in the small fridge. Diana watched, her heart aching again. Her daughter shouldn't be doing this. She should be playing, carefree, being a child. But life had other plans. When Josie finished, she returned to the couch and snuggled up next to her mother. "Mom? Do you think I'll see him again?" Diana thought for a moment. She didn't want to give false hope, but she also didn't want to take the sparkle from her daughter's eyes. "Who knows, sweetie?" Josie smiled and closed her eyes, tired. Diana pulled the blanket over both of them. She looked at the cracked ceiling, the stained walls, the life she couldn't give her daughter. But in that moment, with a full stomach and Josie by her side, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: gratitude, and maybe hope. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in weeks, slept without hunger. Warren entered his house and was greeted by the usual silence. The mansion was huge, high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, imported furniture. Everything in its place and everything perfect, everything empty. He went up the marble staircase and down the hall to Sophie's room. The door was ajar. He stopped there, watching. Sophie was sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys, dolls, stuffed animals, dollhouses, cars. The room looked like a department store. Shelves full, boxes stacked, things that had never been opened. The girl was 5 years old, blonde hair tied in 2 perfect braids, light blue eyes. She wore a pink dress with bows, flawless white shoes. She looked like a doll, an expensive doll. Warren knocked lightly on the door. "Can I come in?" Sophie looked at him and shrugged. "Sure." He came in and sat on the edge of the bed. Sophie went back to playing, ignoring her father's presence. She would pick up a doll, look at it, toss it aside, pick up another, repeat the process. "What are you doing?" Warren asked. "Playing." "With which one?" Sophie sighed, annoyed. "I don't know. None of them are any good." Warren frowned. "What do you mean none of them are any good? You have dozens of dolls here." "I know, but they're all the same. Boring." She threw the doll she was holding on the floor and crossed her arms. Warren looked around. Sophie was partly right. There were many dolls, but they all looked the same. Perfect hair, expensive dresses, plastic smiles. "So what do you want?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Sophie turned to him, her eyes shining. "I want that new doll I saw in the commercial, the one that sings and dances." "You already have 3 dolls that sing and dance." "But this one is different. It has more songs." Warren sighed. "Sophie, you already have everything here, but I want that one." She spoke with an annoying naturalness, as if it were obvious, as if having everything wasn't enough, as if she always needed more. Warren looked at his daughter and, for the first time, felt something strange. Discomfort. He had always given Sophie everything. Everything she asked for, everything she wanted. He thought he was being a good father, that he was showing love. But now, after meeting Josie, he saw the truth. He wasn't showing love. He was raising a spoiled girl. "Dad," Sophie called, noticing his silence. "Are you going to buy it for me?" Warren took a moment to answer. "I'll think about it." Sophie pouted. "But I want it now." "I said I'll think about it." She crossed her arms again and turned her face away. Warren knew that behavior. It was the beginning of a tantrum. Normally, he would give in. He'd buy what she wanted just to avoid the drama. But today was different. Today he was different. He thought of Josie in the park, of the stones, of her answer when he offered the doll. "I'd rather have food." Sophie would never say that. Sophie never had to choose between a toy and food, because Sophie always had everything. Warren looked at his daughter again. Sophie was fiddling with another doll, having already forgotten their conversation. She opened the doll's mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then she threw it on the floor. "This one is boring too," she muttered. Warren felt the discomfort grow. How could Sophie have so much and still find everything boring? How could she be surrounded by things and not value anything? He remembered Josie's smile when she took the bags of food, the sparkle in her eyes, the genuine gratitude. She had received hamburgers and was as happy as if she had been given the world. Sophie got presents every week and never smiled like that. Sophie, Warren said, trying another approach. What? Are you happy? The question caught the girl by surprise. She stopped fidgeting with her toys and looked at her father. What do you mean? Are you happy with all this? He gestured to the room full of things. Sophie shrugged. I guess. You guess? Yeah, I like the stuff. But there's always something better. Warren felt as if he had been slapped. There's always something better. That's what he had taught his daughter, that nothing was ever enough, that she always needed more. He got up from the bed and walked to the window. He looked out at the huge garden, the swimming pool, the cars in the garage, everything he had achieved, everything he thought mattered. Dad, you're acting weird today, Sophie said from behind him. Am I? Yeah. You don't usually hang out in my room. She was right. Warren spent more time in his office than with his daughter. Always busy, always working, always buying things to make up for his absence, but things didn't make up for anything. I'm sorry, he said, turning to Sophie. I should spend more time with you. Sophie blinked, confused by the apology. Okay. Warren went back to the bed and sat down again. He looked at his daughter, really looked. Sophie was beautiful, well cared for, had everything. But there was something missing, something he couldn't name. There was something missing that Josie had in abundance. Sophie, I met a little girl today. Sophie raised an eyebrow. What girl? A girl your age. She was playing in the park. So she didn't have any toys, just stones. Sophie made a strange face. Stones? Why? Because that's what she had. Sophie thought for a moment. Doesn't she have money to buy toys? No. She doesn't even have money to buy food. Sophie fell silent. She looked at her own toys, then at her father. That's sad. It is, Warren agreed. And you know what I did? I offered her a doll, an expensive doll. And did she like it? Warren shook his head. She refused it. Sophie's eyes widened. Why? Because she said she'd rather have food for her mom. Sophie was dumbfounded. She looked around at her toys again, as if seeing them for the first time. She didn't want the doll. No, she wanted to take care of her mum. Sophie didn't answer. She just stood there, processing the information. Warren watched his daughter, waiting for a reaction, some sign that she understood. But Sophie just shrugged. So you gave her food, right? I did. Then that's okay. Sophie went back to picking up a doll. Dad, so are you going to buy me that new doll? Warren felt his chest tighten. She didn't get it. She didn't understand at all. He stood up and walked to the door. I'll think about it, he repeated. Sophie didn't seem satisfied, but she didn't press him. Warren left the room and closed the door behind him. He stood there in the hallway, taking a deep breath. The contrast was stark. Josie, with nothing, thought of her mother. Sophie, with everything, only thought about having more. And it was his fault. He had given Sophie everything, but he hadn't given her the most important thing. He hadn't taught her gratitude. He hadn't taught her empathy. He hadn't taught her what really mattered. Warren leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Josie was 5 years old and already knew the value of things. She knew what was important. She knew how to choose between a toy and feeding her mother. Sophie was 5 years old and knew none of that. And that hurt. It hurt because Warren saw the failure, saw the mistake, saw that he had failed as a father. He opened his eyes and looked down the empty hallway of the mansion. Everything there was beautiful, expensive, perfect. But everything there was empty, just as Sophie was becoming. Warren went down the stairs slowly. He entered his office and closed the door. He sat in the leather chair and put his face in his hands. He needed to change this. He needed to fix it before it was too late, before Sophie became an adult incapable of valuing anything, incapable of caring about anything but herself. Warren looked out the window. Night had fallen. The city lights twinkled in the distance. He thought of Josie and Diana. He thought of that small apartment, that difficult life, and he thought of the gratitude in Josie's eyes. Then he thought of Sophie, in the room full of empty things, in the eyes that never truly sparkled. The contrast was clear and painful. Warren closed his eyes. He needed to do something, and he knew exactly what. Warren woke up early, earlier than usual. The night had been long, full of thoughts that wouldn't let him sleep properly. He stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. The park, Josie, the stones, her answer, and Sophie. He got up, showered, and put on simpler clothes. No suit today. A light shirt, jeans. He wanted to go unnoticed. He wanted to be just a man, not the businessman Warren Blake. He went down to the kitchen and had coffee alone. The house was quiet. Sophie was still asleep. His wife had traveled last week and hadn't even called to see how they were. The marriage had been just a piece of paper for years. They lived together, but they didn't live together. Warren finished his coffee and grabbed his car keys. "Michael, I'm driving today." The driver, who was already waiting in the garage, frowned. "Mr. Blake, but are you sure?" "I'm sure." Michael nodded and handed over the keys. Warren got in the car and left the mansion. He drove through the streets that were now beginning to feel familiar. He passed through the rich neighborhoods, then the middle-class ones, until he reached the simpler neighborhoods. He parked near the park. He got out of the car and looked around. The park was empty at this time of the morning, just a few birds of the wind in the trees. He walked slowly, searching, and then he saw her, Josie, in the same spot as yesterday, sitting on the ground, surrounded by the same stones, as if she hadn't left, as if that were her only place in the world. Warren approached slowly. Josie was so focused she didn't notice him at first. She was arranging the stones in rows, then in circles, then in piles, playing, creating worlds with what she had. "Hi, Josie." The girl looked up and her eyes lit up. "Rich mister." She jumped up and ran to him, stopping a few feet away. She was smiling broadly, genuinely. "You came back." Warren smiled back. "I'm back, I said I would be." "No, you didn't, but I was hoping." He crouched down to her level. "So how are you?" "Good. My mom is good too. We ate everything you gave us. It was so good." Warren felt his chest warm. "That's good. And did she like it?" "She loved it. She even cried with happiness." Warren swallowed hard. Diana had cried, from happiness. Because of a meal, something so simple, so basic, had made a woman cry with gratitude. "Josie, I wanted to ask you something." "What?" "Can I meet your mum?" Josie tilted her head, thinking, "Why?" "Because I want to help, more than I already have, but to do that I need to talk to her." Josie was silent for a few seconds, assessing him, then she smiled. Okay, come with me." She held out her little hand. Warren looked at that small, dirt-stained hand and felt something break inside him. He took her hand gently, as if it was something fragile. "Let's go," Josie said, pulling him. They walked through the park, then through the streets. Warren observed everything. The small houses, the broken sidewalks, the people hurrying to work. A world he had never lived in, a world he had always ignored. Josie held his hand with confidence. She skipped from time to time, dodged potholes, smiled at people she knew. She was a happy child, despite everything. "Is it far?" Warren asked. "No, just up ahead." They turned a corner and Josie pointed to an old building. 3 stories, peeling paint, windows with rusty bars. Warren felt his heart sink. "It's there." They went inside. The hallway was dark, smelling of mold. The stairs creaked with every step. Josie climbed them calmly, used to it. Warren followed her, feeling more and more constricted inside. They reached the 2nd floor. Josie stopped in front of an old wooden door. She knocked 3 times. "Mom, it's me." There was a noise from inside the apartment. Slow footsteps. The door opened. Warren saw Diana for the first time. She was young. She couldn't have been more than 30. Long blonde hair but dull. Light blue eyes, just like Josie's, but tired. She was too thin, her face pale, her hands trembling. She wore a simple nightgown and a torn robe. But there was something about her, something that hadn't been extinguished. Dignity. Even so, weakened, sick, she held her head high. "Josie." Diana looked at her daughter, then at Warren, her face filled with confusion. "Mom, this is the man I told you about." "The rich mister." Diana looked Warren up and down. He saw the embarrassment in her eyes. She tried to fix her hair, to close her robe more tightly. She was ashamed. I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting visitors," Diana said, her voice weak. Warren shook his head quickly. You don't need to apologize. I'm the one who came unannounced. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Diana hesitated, but she stepped back. Please, come in. Warren entered the apartment and felt his heart sink further. It was smaller than it looked from the outside. The living room had an old couch, a broken coffee table, a small and old television. The walls had damp stains. The ceiling had cracks. But it was clean. Everything was in its place. Diana tried to maintain the dignity of her home. Please, sit, Diana said, pointing to the couch. Warren sat. Josie climbed onto the couch next to him, smiling. Diana remained standing, not knowing what to do. Don't you want to sit? Warren asked. Okay. Diana sat on the edge of the couch, keeping her distance. She looked at her own hands, avoiding Warren's gaze. My name is Warren, he said, breaking the silence. Diana. Nice to meet you, Diana. She just nodded. The silence returned, heavy. Josie swung her legs, oblivious to the discomfort. Warren took a deep breath. I came here because I want to help. Diana looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. How you already helped? Yesterday. The food you gave Josie. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You have no idea how much that meant to us. Warren saw the tears forming in her eyes. Diana blinked, trying to hold them back. Josie told me that you cried when she said she wanted food instead of the doll, Diana said, her voice breaking. Warren nodded. I did, because she made me see something I had forgotten. She reminded me of what really matters. Diana looked at her daughter with affection. She's special, always has been. I know. Anyone can see that. Diana smiled, but it was a sad smile. I just wish I could give her more. I wish she had toys, nice clothes, food every day. But I can't. Why not? Warren asked carefully, not wanting to be intrusive. Diana hesitated. She looked at Josie, then back at Warren. Josie, go play in your room for a little bit, okay? But Mom? Go on, sweetie. Just for a few minutes. Josie pouted but obeyed. She jumped off the couch and went to her room, closing the door. Diana waited until she was sure her daughter wasn't listening. Then she looked at Warren. I'm sick, very sick. Warren felt his stomach turn. Dime, what do you have? Diana took a deep breath. I'd rather not go into details, but it's serious. I can't work. I can barely do anything. Some days I can hardly get out of bed. Are you getting treatment? Diana shook her head. I don't have money for that. I don't have health insurance. The public system has a waiting list of months. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know. A miracle, maybe. Warren felt anger rise within him. Not at her. At the situation. At a world that allowed this. A young woman, a mother, sick and without help. A 5-year-old child taking care of her mother. Diana, I can help. With the treatment, with money, with whatever you need. Diana shook her head immediately. No, I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't want charity. Warren leaned forward. It's not charity, it's help. It's different. To me, it's the same thing. Diana, please, let me help. For Josie's sake. Upon hearing her daughter's name, Diana hesitated. She looked at the bedroom door where Josie was playing. I don't know if it's right. Why wouldn't it be? Because I don't know you. Because you showed up out of nowhere. Because I don't deserve this. Warren felt his heart ache. Yes, you do. You and Josie deserve all the best. Diana started to cry. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Warren didn't know what to do. He wanted to hug her, comfort her, but he didn't feel he had the right. I'm sorry, Diana said, wiping her face. I didn't mean to cry in front of you. You don't need to apologize. Diana took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Why do you want to help? Really? Why? Warren thought for a moment. Then he answered honestly, because Josie made me see that I was living wrong. Because I have a daughter her age, and I realized I haven't taught her anything of value. Because you two reminded me of what really matters in life. Diana looked at him, her eyes still moist. You have a daughter? Warren nodded. I do. Sophie, she's 5 years old too. And is she happy? The question caught Warren by surprise. He took a moment to answer. I don't know. She has everything. Toys, clothes, a huge house. But I don't know if she's happy. Truly happy. Diana gave a faint smile. Josie has nothing, but she's happy. She always has been. I know. I saw that yesterday. And it touched me. Diana wiped her face again. Okay, I'll accept your help, but only if it's honest. No ulterior motives. Warren shook his head. I promise. No ulterior motives. I just want to help. Diana nodded, still unsure, but trusting. For the first time since she got sick, she felt a little hope. Thank you, she said, her voice low. You're welcome. The bedroom door opened and Josie came running out. Are you guys done talking? Diana smiled. Yes, sweetie. Josie jumped into her mother's lap, hugging her. Diana held her tight, kissing the top of her blonde head. Warren watched the scene, mother and daughter hugging, happy and even with so little. It was something he rarely saw at home. Sophie never hugged like that, never showed so much affection. He stood up. I have to go, but I'll be back, okay? Josie nodded, excited. Promise? I promise. Diana stood up too, with difficulty. She held out her hand. Thank you, Warren. Really? Warren shook her hand. It was a cold, weak hand, but the grip was firm, full of dignity. I'm the one who should be thanking you for letting me help. He said his goodbyes and left the apartment. He went down the creaky stairs, through the dark hallway, and out onto the street. The sun was high now, illuminating everything. Warren got in his car and just sat there, holding the steering wheel. His heart had changed. His perspective had changed. Everything had changed. He had entered that apartment as Warren Blake, the businessman, and he left as Warren, the man, a man who finally understood what really mattered. He started the car and drove back home. But he knew that nothing would be the same, because now he had seen the truth, and the truth had changed everything. 3 days had passed since the first visit. 3 days in which Warren couldn't get Diana and Josie out of his head. He worked, attended meetings, signed contracts, but his mind was always in that small apartment, on those 2 lives that needed help. On the morning of the 4th day, he woke up determined. He went to the grocery store and filled 2 carts. Rice, beans, pasta, canned goods, fruit, vegetables, juice, milk, everything a family needed, everything Diana and Josie didn't have. Then he stopped at a pharmacy and bought vitamins, pain relievers, dietary supplements. They weren't the specific medications Diana needed, but it was something. It was better than nothing. He loaded everything into the car and drove to their neighborhood. He parked on the same street and got out with the bags. There were many. He had to make 3 trips to the apartment door. He knocked. Josie opened it, and her eyes widened. Rich, mister? Warren smiled. Hi, Josie. I brought some things for you. Josie looked at the bags in the hallway and shouted, Mom, he's back. Diana appeared at the door, leaning on the frame. She looked a little better than on his last visit. There was some color in her face, though still faint. She wore simple but clean clothes. Warren, she said, surprised. Hi, Diana. I brought some things. Diana looked at the bags and brought a hand to her mouth. Warren, this is too much. No, it's not. It's the basics. Please, let me help. Diana hesitated, but nodded. She opened the door completely, and Warren began to carry the bags inside. Josie helped, taking the lighter ones, excited. Look, Mum. There's so much stuff. Diana watched everything with teary eyes. She sat on the couch, too weak to help. Warren and Josie organized everything in the kitchen. The fridge, which had been almost empty, was now full. The empty cupboards now had groceries. When they finished, Warren returned to the living room. Josie had gone out to the yard. He could hear her humming outside. Kashi's happy, Diana said, looking out the window. Warren went over and looked too. The yard was tiny. It had a clothesline with old clothes, a patch of dry grass, some withered plants. But Josie was there, running back and forth, playing with an old small box. She pretended it was a car, pushing it, making engine sounds with her mouth. Warren watched her. She was smiling, laughing to herself. Jumping, running, it was pure joy. Genuine, spontaneous joy that came from within. She didn't need expensive toys, video games, anything. She just needed imagination and love. She's always been like that, Diana said, her voice soft. Since she was a baby, always happy. Always playing with anything. Warren felt his chest tighten. He thought of Sophie in her room full of toys, on the shelves full of things she never used, her bored expression, the way she always asked for more, always wanted more, never satisfied. And then he looked at Josie, playing with a box, smiling as if it were the most fun thing in the world. "She's special," Warren said. "She is," Diana agreed. "I don't know where she gets so much light. It's not from me. I'm always tired, always sad, but she shines." Warren turned to Diana. "You're special too. You're raising her alone, sick, without money, and yet she's happy. That's a credit to you." Diana shook her head. "I don't do much. She's the one who takes care of me, really. And still you maintain your dignity. You keep the house clean. You keep Josie happy. That's a lot, Diana." She looked at Warren, her eyes full of tears. "Thank you for saying that. For making me feel like I'm not a failure. You're not. Far from it." Diana wiped her face with the back of her hand. Warren looked back at Josie. She was now lying on the grass, looking at the sky. She pointed at the clouds, talking to herself, creating stories. "She has an incredible imagination," Warren said. "She does. I always say she's going to be a writer when she grows up, or an artist. Something creative. I don't doubt it." They stood in silence for a moment, just watching Josie. Warren felt something grow inside him. It wasn't just compassion. It wasn't just pity. It was more than that. It was commitment. It was the certainty that he wasn't going to abandon these two. He wasn't going to turn his back. He wasn't going to forget. He was going to help. He was going to do more. He was going to make sure Diana got the treatment she needed. That Josie had what she needed. Not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. Because it made sense. Because, for the first time in a long time, he was doing something that really mattered. "Diana," he said, breaking the silence. I want to really help you. Not just with food. I want to pay for a private doctor. I want to make sure you get the treatment you need." Diana turned to him, alarmed. "Warren, no, that's too much. I can't accept it." "Yes, you can." "I can't. I already owe you too much." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. You've already done so much." Warren interrupted her. "Diana, I have money. A lot of money. Money I don't even know what to do with. And you're dying. You're literally dying because you don't have money to get treated. How can I know that and do nothing?" Diana started crying again. "But why? Why do you care so much?" Warren thought about the answer. Then he told the truth. "Because Josie reminded me of what I had forgotten. She reminded me that life isn't about having things. It's about caring. It's about helping. It's about making a difference. And I want to make a difference in your lives." Diana sobbed, covering her face with her hands. Warren stood there, not knowing what to do. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know how. Josie came running in through the door, stopping when she saw her mother crying. "Mom, why are you crying?" Diana quickly wiped her face and opened her arms. Josie ran and jumped into her lap. Diana hugged her tightly, hiding her face in her daughter's blonde hair. "I'm okay, sweetie. I'm happy. These are happy tears." Josie pulled back a little and looked at her mother's face. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Warren brought us a lot of food. We're not going to go hungry." Josie smiled and turned to Warren. "Thank you, rich mister." Warren smiled back. "You're welcome, Josie. Do you want to play with me outside?" Warren blinked, surprised. "Play?" "Yeah. I have a really cool box. We can pretend it's a race car." Warren looked at Diana, who smiled and nodded. He stood up. "Okay, let's play." Josie took his hand and pulled him into the yard. She showed him the box, explained the rules of the game she had invented, and started running and shouting. Warren joined in, even though he felt ridiculous, but he didn't care. Because Josie was happy. and seeing that happiness was worth anything. They played for a few minutes. Warren pushed the box. Josie pretended to drive. They made engine noises. It was silly. It was childish. But it was pure. It was real. When they stopped, Josie was out of breath from laughing so much. Warren was tired too, but smiling. "You're nice, rich mister," Josie said. "You too, Josie." She suddenly hugged his leg, a quick hug, but full of affection. Warren placed his hand on her head, feeling his heart clench. "I have to go now," he said. "Will you come back?" "I will. I promise." Josie smiled and ran back inside. Warren stood there for another moment, looking at the small yard, the simple house at that life so different from his own. And then he knew with absolute certainty, he wasn't going to turn his back. He wasn't going to forget. He wasn't going to leave Diana and Josie alone. He was going to help. He was going to do everything he could. Because now this was no longer a choice, it was a commitment. Warren went inside, said goodbye to Diana, and promised to return soon. He left the apartment and went down the stairs. When he got into the car, he sat there for a moment, thinking. He had everything, money, power, success, but none of it had meaning. None of it filled the void he felt. But helping Diana and Josie, that made sense. That was fulfilling. He started the car and drove back home. But now he had a purpose. He had a mission. He was going to save those 2 lives. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And that made all the difference. Warren entered Sophie's room on Saturday morning. She was watching cartoons on the huge television, surrounded by expensive cushions and stuffed animals she never hugged. "Sophie, turn that off. We're going out." Sophie didn't even look at him. "I don't want to go out." "I'm not asking. Go get ready." She finally turned, surprised by her father's firm tone. "Out where?" "You're going to meet a friend." "What friend?" "A girl your age, Josie." Sophie scowled. "I don't know any Josie." "That's why you're going to meet her now. Let's go." Sophie crossed her arms. "What if I don't want to?" Warren took a deep breath, trying to stay patient. "Sophie, this is not negotiable. You're going. Put on some simple clothes and come downstairs." He left the room before she could protest further. Sophie stood there, confused and irritated, but she obeyed. She put on a light pink dress, white shoes, and went downstairs. Warren looked at her and shook his head. "No, go change and put on something simpler." "Why?" "Because jeans and a t-shirt." "Go." Sophie went back up, complaining. She returned a few minutes later in jeans and a white t-shirt. Still, they were expensive clothes, but at least they were more discreet. "Done. Can we go now?" "We can." They got in the car. Warren drove. Sophie was quiet, looking out the window. When they started passing through the simpler neighborhoods, she frowned. "Vedad, where are we going?" "I already told you, to meet Josie." "But does she live here?" "She does." Sophie looked around, seeing the small houses, the potholed streets, the people walking on the sidewalk. But it's ugly here." Warren felt his irritation rise. "It's not ugly. It's different from what you're used to." "But there are no nice stores." "There's nothing. There are people, Sophie. There are families. There is life. Just because it's not full of expensive stores doesn't mean it's ugly." Sophie fell silent, but continued to look out the window with discomfort. Warren parked in front of the building. Sophie looked at the old building and made a face. "Are we going in there?" "We are." "But..." "There's falling apart." Warren turned to her, serious. "Sophie, listen. You're going to go in there, you're going to meet Josie and her mum, and you're going to be polite. No complaining, no making faces. Understood?" Sophie swallowed hard and nodded. "Understood." They got out of the car. Warren held Sophie's hand and they entered the building. She looked at everything with wide eyes. The dark hallway, the old staircase, and the smell of mold. She squeezed her father's hand tightly. They reached the door and Warren knocked. Josie opened it and her face lit up. "Rich mister, you came back." Then she saw Sophie and stopped. The 2 girls stared at each other. Blonde, light-eyed, the same age. But from completely different worlds. "Hi," Josie said shyly. Sophie didn't answer, she just stared. "Sophie, say hi." Warren nudged. "Hi," Sophie muttered. Diana appeared behind Josie. "Warren, what a nice surprise. Come in." Warren entered with Sophie. The girl looked around with wide eyes. The old couch and the broken table, the small television, the stains on the wall, all so different from her mansion. "Sophie, this is Diana, Josie's mom, and this is Josie." Sophie waved shyly. "Hi," Diana smiled. "Nice to meet you, Sophie. Josie, why don't you take Sophie to your room? You can play there." Josie nodded, excited. She held out her hand to Sophie. "Come on, I have some cool things to show you." Sophie looked at Josie's hand, hesitant. Then she looked at her father. Warren nodded encouragingly. Sophie took a deep breath and took Josie's hand. The two girls went to the room. Warren and Diana sat in the living room. "Thank you for bringing her," Diana said. "Thank you for having her. I think Sophie needs to see this. She needs to understand that the world isn't just what she knows." Diana smiled. "She seems scared." "She is. But it will be good for her." In the room, Josie was showing Sophie her toys. There were few: an old hairless doll, some broken toy cars, a half-used box of colored pencils, and the stones. The same stones from the park arranged on a makeshift shelf. "These are my stones," Josie said proudly. "Each one is different. Look at this one. It looks like a heart." Sophie looked at the stones, confused. "You play with stones?" "I do. They're cool. We can make castles, make little houses, pretend they're treasures." Sophie didn't answer. She looked at the small room, the old toys, at everything that was so different from her life. "Sit here," Josie said, patting the floor next to her. Sophie hesitated, but sat down. Josie picked up some stones and started arranging them on the floor. "We can make a city. Look, this big stone is the castle. These small ones are the houses." Sophie just watched. She didn't understand. How could someone play with stones? How could someone be happy with so little? But Josie was happy. She smiled, invented stories, created worlds with those simple stones. And there was something about it, something Sophie couldn't name. "Do you want to help?" Josie asked. I don't know how to play with stones." Josie laughed. "It's easy. You just have to use your imagination. Look, take this stone here and pretend it's a princess." Sophie took the stone awkwardly. She looked at it, then at Josie. "And now what?" "Now you make up a story. The princess is going somewhere, or running away from something, or looking for someone. You decide." Sophie was silent for a moment. Then, hesitantly, she began to move the stone. "The princess is looking for her family." Josie smiled, excited. "Yes, and look, she found them. Here, this is her family." Josie placed other stones around Sophie's, and suddenly they were playing, creating stories, inventing worlds. Sophie began to relax. The discomfort lessened. She still found everything strange, but there was something there, something simple, something real. "Do you always play with stones?" Sophie asked. "Almost always. I don't have many toys, so I make things up. Sometimes I use boxes, sometimes twigs, sometimes stones. Anything works." Sophie looked at Josie. She didn't seem sad about not having toys. She seemed happy, genuinely happy. "Aren't you sad for not having real toys?" Josie shrugged. "Sometimes, but my mum says what's important isn't what you have. It's how you play, and I have a lot of fun with my things." Sophie was quiet, thinking. She had a room full of toys, but she never really had fun. She never made up stories. She never created worlds. She just picked things up, looked at them, and threw them away. "I have a lot of toys," Sophie said, "but they're boring." Josie tilted her head. "Why are they boring?" "I don't know. They just are. They only do one thing. You can't invent much." Josie thought for a moment. "Then maybe you need to play differently, not the way the toy tells you to, but your own way." Sophie looked at Josie, surprised. No one had ever said that to her. They always thought that having expensive toys was enough. But Josie, who had almost nothing, was teaching her something Sophie had never learned. That happiness wasn't in things, It was in imagination, in creativity, in the freedom to invent. They continued to play. Josie showed her the old doll, told her its story, invented adventures. Sophie participated, still clumsy but trying, and little by little she started to loosen up. She started to smile. She started to have real fun. In the living room, Warren watched through the ajar door. He saw the two girls on the floor playing with stones and old toys. He saw Sophie smiling. Her smile he hadn't seen in a long time. "They're getting along," Diana said beside him. "They are. I didn't expect Sophie to relax so quickly. Josie has that gift. She can make anyone feel at ease." Warren looked at Diana. "Did you teach her that?" Diana shook her head. "No, she was born that way. I just tried not to get in the way." Warren looked back at the girls. It was the clash of two worlds. Sophie, used to luxury, full of everything. Josie, with almost nothing but full of life. And there, in that small room, the two worlds met. And Sophie was learning. She was learning that she didn't need expensive things to be happy. She was learning that imagination was worth more than any toy. She was learning what Warren had never been able to teach her. That happiness was in the simplest things. Warren felt his chest tighten. He looked at Josie, playing with Sophie as if they had been friends for years, showing patience, kindness, joy. And then he looked at Sophie, seeing his daughter smile for real for the first time in a long time. That meeting wasn't just between two girls. It was between two realities, two ways of living, two ways of being happy. And Warren knew that, from then on, nothing would be the same. Because Sophie had seen something that would change her forever. She had seen that true wealth wasn't in the things you have, but in the heart you cultivate. The car glided silently through the streets. Warren drove and looking ahead, but attentive to Sophie in the back seat. She was quiet, quieter than usual. She looked out the window but seemed distant, thoughtful. This was unusual. Sophie always talked, always asked for things, always complained about something. But now, only silence. Warren looked in the rearview mirror. "Is everything okay, Sophie?" She didn't answer right away. She continued to look out the window, watching the streets change, the simple neighborhoods giving way to the rich ones, the small houses turning into mansions, the world returning to her normal, but she didn't seem happy about it. "Sophie," Warren called again. "I'm fine, Dad." But her voice was different. Softer, more subdued. Warren kept driving. They passed a huge toy store full of lights and advertisements. Sophie always asked to stop there, always wanted to go in, but today she didn't even look. They arrived home. Warren parked in the garage and turned off the engine. Sophie didn't move. She just sat there looking at her own hands. "We're here," Warren said. "Shaz, I know. Aren't you getting out?" Sophie took a deep breath. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." She finally looked at him. "Josie, is she happy?" The question caught Warren by surprise. He turned in his seat, looking at his daughter. "Do you think she is?" Sophie nodded slowly. "I think so." She smiled the whole time. She played happily with those stones, and she didn't complain about anything. "And that surprised you?" Sophie shrugged. I thought she would be sad, because she doesn't have toys, she doesn't have nice clothes. She has nothing." Warren felt his heart ache. "But she isn't sad, is she?" "No. She's happier than me." The sentence came out quietly but was full of truth. Sophie looked at her father with sincere eyes. "I have everything, Dad, everything. But I'm not happy like Josie." "Why?" Warren didn't know what to say. He knew the answer, but he didn't know if Sophie would understand. He unbuckled his seatbelt and turned completely towards her. "Because having things doesn't make you happy, Sophie. Being happy comes from within. It comes from how you look at the world, from how you value what you have, from how you care about people." Sophie was silent, processing. "Josie has very little, but she values everything. She plays with stones as if they were treasures. She smiles at simple things. And that's a rare thing, a beautiful thing." Sophie looked at her own hands again. "I have a lot of dolls, but I never really play with them. I just pick them up and toss them aside." "I know." "And Josie has only one doll. Old, without hair. But she loves that doll. She told me its story, invented adventures. She takes care of that doll as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Warren felt his eyes sting. That's because to her, it is because she doesn't have many things, so she values what she has. Sophie looked at her father. I don't value anything, do I? The question was like a punch. Warren took a deep breath. No, you don't. And it's my fault. I gave you everything. I gave you so much that you forgot what it means to value something, what it means to be grateful. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward, looking at her father. Dad, I really liked Josie. Warren smiled. I saw you two played a lot. Yeah, and she was really nice to me. Even though I didn't know how to play right, she was patient. She taught me. She's a special girl. Sophie nodded. Dad, can I give her one of my dolls? Warren felt his chest swell. He looked at his daughter, surprised and touched. Sophie had never offered to give anything to anyone. She had never thought about sharing. She always wanted more, never wanted to give. But now she was offering of her own free will. You can, Warren said, his voice emotional. But only if you really mean it. Sophie frowned. What do you mean? Only if you really want to give it, not because I'm asking you to, not because you feel obligated, but because you want to make Josie happy. Sophie thought for a moment. Then she nodded with certainty. I really mean it, Dad. I want to give it to her. Josie deserves to have a nice doll, and I have so many. It doesn't make sense for me to have so many, and for her to have none. Warren felt the tears well up. He blinked, trying to hold them back, but he couldn't. A tear ran down his face. Sophie's eyes widened. Dad, Tim, are you crying? Warren laughed, wiping his face. I am, but they're happy tears. Why? Because you just showed me that I haven't completely failed as a father. You understood. You really understood. Sophie didn't say anything, but she smiled. A small but genuine smile. A smile Warren hadn't seen in a long time. They got out of the car and went inside. Sophie ran to her room. Warren followed her, curious. She went in and looked at the shelves full of dolls. There were dozens, some still in their boxes, never opened. Sophie walked slowly, looking at each one. Then she stopped in front of a specific doll. It was beautiful. Long blonde hair, a blue dress, eyes that blinked. One of the most expensive ones Warren had bought. Sophie picked up the doll carefully. I'm going to give her this one. Warren came closer. That's one of your favorites. I know. That's why I'm giving it to her. Josie deserves a good doll. A real doll. Warren knelt beside his daughter. Sophie, are you sure you're not going to regret it? Sophie looked at the doll, then at her father. I'm sure I have a lot. And Josie has none. It's not fair. Warren hugged his daughter, a tight hug full of pride. Sophie hugged him back, still holding the doll. I love you, Sophie, and I'm very proud of you. I love you too, Dad. They stayed like that for a moment, father and daughter, connected in a way they hadn't been for a long time. When they let go, Sophie looked at the doll again. When can we take it to her? Tomorrow. We'll go there tomorrow. Sophie smiled, excited. Is Josie going to like it? She's going to love it. Sophie hugged the doll to her chest, happy. Warren watched his daughter. Something had changed in her, something deep. She had seen Josie's reality. She had seen happiness without things, and that had touched something inside her. It had shown her that joy wasn't on shelves full of toys. It was in the heart, in gratitude, in simplicity. Warren stood up and looked around the room. All those things, all those dolls, stuffed animals, toys, and Sophie barely touched them. But now she was willing to give away one of her favorites, not because she was forced to, but because she wanted to, because she had learned something Warren had never been able to teach her. That giving was more important than having, that making someone happy was worth more than accumulating things, that true wealth was in caring for others. Sophie placed the doll on the bed carefully. I'll leave her here until tomorrow. I want her to look pretty for Josie. Warren smiled. Good idea. Sophie looked back at the other dolls on the shelves. She stood there, thoughtful. Dad, Hmm? Do other kids also not have toys, like Josie? Warren nodded. Yes. Many children don't. Sophie was silent for a moment. So, could we give away more dolls, not just to Josie, but to other kids too? Warren felt his heart burst with pride. He knelt down again, looking into his daughter's eyes. Yes, we can. If you want, we can set some aside and donate them. Sophie nodded firmly. I want to... It doesn't make sense for me to have so many and for other kids to have none. Warren hugged his daughter again, this time with tears streaming freely down his face. He didn't bother to hide them. He was too proud, too emotional. Sophie had changed. In a few hours, she had learned more than in 5 years of life, and it was all thanks to Josie, a 5-year-old girl who played with stones, who smiled without having almost anything, who showed that happiness wasn't in expensive things, but in a generous heart. Warren kissed Sophie's head and left the room. He went down the stairs and to his office. He sat in his chair and looked out the window. His daughter had changed, and so had he. And it was all because of a girl in a park, a girl who preferred food to a doll. Warren closed his eyes and smiled. Life had come full circle, and he was grateful for it, because now, finally, he and Sophie were learning what really mattered. Warren and Sophie arrived at the apartment in the middle of the morning. Sophie held the doll carefully, as if it were something fragile. She was nervous but excited. Do you think she'll like it? Sophie asked for the 3rd time on the way. I'm sure of it, Warren answered, smiling. They went up the stairs. Sophie knocked on the door this time. Josie opened it, and her eyes lit up. Sophie, you came back. I'm back, Sophie smiled. And I brought something for you. Josie looked at the doll in Sophie's hands. Her eyes widened. Is it for me? Sophie nodded, holding out the doll. It is. I want you to have it. Josie took the doll with both hands, as if she were receiving a treasure. She looked at the doll, then at Sophie, then back at the doll. But she's so beautiful. So new. I know. That's why I wanted to give her to you. You deserve a nice doll. Josie hugged the doll to her chest, her eyes shining with emotion. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Sophie smiled, feeling something warm in her chest. It was a new feeling, a good one. It was the feeling of making someone happy. You're welcome. Want to play? I do. The 2 girls ran to the room laughing. Warren and Diana stayed in the living room. Diana looked at the bedroom door, smiling. That was very kind of her, Diana said. It was her idea, Warren replied. Yesterday when we got home, she asked me to bring a doll for Josie. I didn't ask her to. She wanted to. Diana looked at Warren, her eyes misty. You're raising a good girl. Warren shook his head. No, I was raising her wrong. But Josie taught Sophie what I couldn't. She taught her the value of things, the importance of caring for others. Diana wiped her eyes. Josie has that gift, she always has. They sat on the couch. From the room came laughter and excited chatter. The 2 girls were playing freely with genuine joy. Sophie invented stories, Josie completed them, they created worlds together. Warren looked at Diana. You seem better today. I am a little better. I don't know if it's because I have food now or because I have hope again. Probably both. Diana smiled. There was a moment of comfortable silence. Then she spoke. You know, before I got sick, I worked a lot. Warren turned to her, attentive. Where did you work? At a big company. Downtown. I was a janitor. Did you like it? Diana shrugged. It was a job. Tiring, but I earned well. Enough to support us. To pay the bills, buy food, even save a little. Warren nodded, encouraging her to continue. I cleaned the offices at night, after everyone had gone home. It was a beautiful place. Clean, organized. Very different from here. She laughed humorlessly. What was the name of the company? Diana thought for a moment. Sublate Group. Warren felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. He froze, staring at Diana. The blood in his veins turned to ice. What? Diana didn't notice his reaction. Blake Group. A huge company. They had several floors, a lot of employees. I worked there for 3 years. Warren could barely breathe. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Blake Group, and he repeated, his voice coming out strange. Yeah, do you know it? Warren didn't answer right away. His mind was spinning. Blake Group, his company. Diana had worked at his company. She had cleaned his offices, and he never knew, never paid attention. I know it, he said, his voice low. Diana continued, oblivious to the impact of her words. I liked working there. It was tough, but the pay was on time. Until I got sick, I started missing work. I couldn't handle the workload anymore, and then they fired me. Warren felt guilt explode inside him. She had worked for him, and when she got sick, she was fired. Without assistance, without help. Thrown out as if she were worthless. Diana, he said, his voice trembling, I need to tell you something. She looked at him, confused by his serious tone. What? Warren took a deep breath. Blake Group, it's my company. I'm the owner. The silence that followed was deafening. Diana was paralyzed, looking at Warren as if he had just said he was a ghost. "Eh, what?" she repeated, her voice barely audible. "I am Warren Blake, owner of the Blake Group, the company where you worked. It's mine." Diana brought a hand to her mouth. She started to tremble. Tears streamed down her face. You're the owner?" Warren nodded, unable to speak. The guilt was overwhelming. Diana had worked for him. She had cleaned his offices. She had been fired by his company, and now she was here, sick, without money, without hope. And he had done nothing. Until that week, he didn't even know she existed. "Diana, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know you had worked there. I didn't know you had been fired." Diana shook her head, still in shock. "I never saw you there. You never stayed late, right?" "No, I left early, before the cleaning crew arrived." Diana laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "So we worked in the same place, but in different worlds. You in the offices, me in the hallways. You never saw me, and I never imagined I would meet you like this." Warren felt tears well up. He covered his face with his hands. "Diana, I'm so sorry, so much. You worked for me. And when you needed it most, my company abandoned you." Diana wiped her face. "It wasn't your fault. You didn't even know I existed." "But I should have known," Warren exploded. "I should have known. I should know the people who work for me. I should care when someone gets sick. But I did none of that. I just signed papers. I only saw numbers. I never saw people." Diana was silent, processing everything. Warren was breathing heavily, guilt and anger mixing inside him. "You worked for me," he repeated, more to himself than to her. "And I let you get fired. I let you go without health care. I let you and Josie go hungry. Warren, you didn't know." "But I should have." He stood up, pacing the room. "I should have better policies. I should take care of my employees, but I only cared about profit, about growth, about money." Diana watched Warren fall apart. She had never seen someone so affected by something like this. "Warren, sit down. Please." He obeyed, and sitting back down on the couch, he put his face in his hands. "I need to fix this." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Diana shook her head. "You've already done so much. You brought food, medicine, you brought your daughter to meet Josie. You've already helped more than anyone would." "But it's not enough," Warren said, looking at her. "It's not enough because you worked for me, and my company abandoned you, and I need to fix this. I need to do what's right." Diana didn't answer. She just looked at Warren, seeing the sincerity on his face, seeing the guilt, seeing the determination. From the room, the girls continued to play, oblivious to the heavy conversation in the living room. Oblivious to the weight of the revelation, Warren sat there in silence and planning, thinking, deciding. He knew what he had to do. The next day, Warren returned to the apartment, alone this time. He knocked on the door, and Diana opened it. She seemed surprised to see him. "Warren, is everything okay?" "It is. I need to talk to you." Diana opened the door and he entered. Josie was in her room, playing with the new doll. Warren could hear her humming. They sat on the couch. Warren took a deep breath, organizing his words. Diana, I spent the night thinking about you, about the company, about what's right. Diana just watched, waiting. And I made a decision. I want to give you your job back. Diana's eyes widened. What? I want you to come back to work at the Blake Group, but not like before. No. He leaned forward, looking into her eyes. I want to give you a fair job, with a better salary, much better, with decent working conditions, with hours that allow you to take care of Josie, and with full health care. The best there is. Diana began to tremble. She shook her head. Warren, no, that's too much. I can't accept it. Yes, you can. I can't. It's charity. It's not charity, Warren said firmly. It's justice. You worked for me. You gave years of your life to my company, and when you got sick, we abandoned you. That's not right. And I'm going to fix it. Diana began to cry. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. I can't believe this is happening. It can't be real. Warren took her hands gently. It's real. Diana, you deserve this. You and Josie deserve to have a decent life, and I'm going to make sure you do. Diana looked at him through her tears. Why? Why do you care so much? Warren thought about the answer. Then he told the truth. Because Josie showed me what I had forgotten. She showed me that people matter, that dignity matters, that doing the right thing matters. And you worked for me. You trusted my company, and we failed you. But I won't fail you again. Diana sobbed, squeezing his hands. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just accept, please, for Josie's sake. Upon hearing her daughter's name, Diana nodded. She didn't have the strength to refuse, not when it meant a better future for Josie. Okay, she said, her voice broken. I accept. Warren smiled, relieved. Great. I'll arrange everything. I'll schedule doctor's appointments for you. I'll make sure you get full treatment. And when you're strong again, you'll come back to work. On your own time. No pressure. Diana could hardly believe it. She had woken up another day without hope, without prospects, expecting only to survive. And now she had a future. She had hope. She had a new beginning. Thank you, she said, her voice low but full of gratitude. Thank you for caring, for not turning your back. I'm the one who should be thanking you, Warren replied, for giving me the chance to do what's right. Josie came running out of the room, hugging the doll. Rich mister, you're back? Warren smiled and opened his arms. Josie ran and jumped into his lap. He hugged her, feeling his heart warm. I'm back and I have good news. What news? Warren looked at Diana, who smiled through her tears. Your mom is going to get better. She's going to have the medicine she needs, and you're going to have a better life. Much better. Josie looked at her mother, confused. Is it true, Mum? Diana nodded, crying. It's true, sweetie. It's true. Josie smiled broadly and hugged Warren tightly. Then she jumped up and hugged her mother. The three of them hugged there in the small living room of that simple apartment. But in that moment, there was something bigger than the walls, something bigger than poverty or sickness. There was hope, there was dignity, there was a new beginning. Warren left the apartment a few minutes later. He went down the stairs with a light heart for the first time in years. He had failed in the past. He had been a businessman who only saw numbers, who didn't see people. But now he was different. Now he saw, now he cared, and he was going to do everything in his power to right his wrongs. To ensure that Diana and Josie had what they deserved, because sometimes life gives you a second chance, and Warren wasn't going to waste his. 2 weeks had passed since Warren offered Diana the job. She had started medical treatment, and the results were visible. There was more color in her face, more strength in her movements, more life in her eyes. Hope had done wonders. Warren visited the apartment regularly now. That Saturday morning he had gone with Sophie. The two girls were playing in the room, their laughter echoing through the small house. Warren and Diana were talking in the living room, having coffee. Suddenly, Josie came running out of the room and stopped in front of Warren. Sophie appeared right behind her, curious. Josie had a serious look on her face, something that seemed to have been on her mind for days. Warren, can I ask you something? Of course, Josie. Anything. She looked down at her hands, nervous, then back at him. Why do you help us so much? Warren blinked, surprised by the direct question. "What do you mean?" Josie took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I thought rich people didn't care." The silence that followed was absolute. Warren felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Diana covered her mouth with her hand, looking at her daughter with wide eyes. Sophie stood frozen at the door, watching. Warren slid off the couch and knelt on the floor, getting to Josie's level. He held her little hands gently. "Josie, tell me, why did you think that?" She shrugged, but there was pain in that simple gesture. "We were hungry and nobody helped. There were people with nice cars passing by on the street every day, but nobody looked at us. There were days I'd stay in the park all day and everyone would just walk past. So I thought rich people didn't care about poor people." Warren felt the tears well up. Every word from that little girl was a painful truth. She was right. Most people didn't care. He himself had been like that for years. "You're right, Josie," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Most really don't care." Josie lowered her head, as if the confirmation hurt. Warren squeezed her hands gently. "But you made me see what really matters." Josie looked up with her blue eyes, confused. "Me? You? That day in the park, when I offered you that expensive doll and you said you'd rather have food, you changed everything for me. You changed my whole life." "But I just told the truth." Warren smiled through his tears. "I know. And that's exactly what woke me up. You made me realize that I was living wrong, that having money means nothing if you don't use it to do good, that being truly rich is about caring for people. So now you care. For real. Now I care. For you, for your mum, for everyone who needs it. And it's all thanks to you, Josie. You taught me how to be human again." Josie smiled, that huge smile that lit up everything. She threw herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. Warren hugged her back, tears streaming freely. Sophie slowly approached and hugged them both. Diana stood up from the couch, crying, and joined the hug. There, in that small apartment, 4 people from different worlds hugged like a real family, because that's what they had become, a family of the heart. The months passed like water. Weekends became sacred. Sophie and Josie always met, alternating between the mansion and the apartment. The place didn't matter. What mattered was being together. The friendship between the 2 girls grew stronger every day. They were inseparable, best friends, soul sisters. The difference in their realities didn't push them apart. It united them deeply. Sophie taught Josie to dream big, to believe that anything was possible. Josie taught Sophie to value the simple things, to find happiness in the little moments. And that pure friendship was transforming everything around them, like ripples expanding in water. Sophie had changed completely. She no longer asked for new toys every week. She didn't complain about being bored. She played for real now, created stories, used her imagination. She donated toys to other children, and she was happy, genuinely happy. Warren and Diana also built a respectful and true friendship. They talked about their daughters, about hopes, about life. Diana returned to work at the Blake Group in a better position, with dignity and hours that allowed her to take care of Josie. And Warren had become another person. He implemented new policies at the company, full health care, fair wages, respect for employees. He knew many by name now, knew their stories. He genuinely cared, and it was all because of a girl in a park who played with stones. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. The 2 families were in the mansion's garden. The girls were playing on the grass, chasing butterflies, inventing imaginary worlds. Warren and Diana sat on a bench under a tree, watching. "Look at them," Diana said, emotional. "So happy, so free." "They are," Warren agreed. "I've never seen Sophie so light-hearted." Josie has changed too. She was always happy, but now she has hope. She dreams about the future. That's new. Warren looked at Diana with affection. "You've changed too. You're stronger, more alive." Diana nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, I am, because for the first time in a long time I have a real future. I have health, a job, hope, and it's all because of you." "No," Warren shook his head. "Because of Josie. She started it all." Diana smiled through her tears. "Then because of her, my little girl of the stones." They sat in silence, just watching the girls. Sophie had put flowers in Josie's hair. The two were laughing, hugging. "Warren," Diana called softly. Thank you. For everything. For caring when no one else did. For not turning your back." Warren felt his chest tighten. "I didn't save the world, Diana. I just changed the world for you two. And you changed mine. And that's everything," Diana replied, taking his hand and squeezing it with gratitude. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Sophie and Josie sat on the grass, tired but happy. Warren watched the two girls, blonde, light-eyed, the same age, but from such different worlds. And yet, best friends, sisters of the heart. Sophie had learned the most important lesson in life, that true happiness wasn't in expensive things, new toys or luxury. It was in sincere connections, in genuine hugs, in simple moments shared with those you love. And Warren had learned that caring for others was the only thing that was truly worthwhile. That night, after Diana and Josie had left, Warren put Sophie to bed. She held his hand before he left. "Dad." "Yes, sweetie. I'm so happy now, happier than when I had everything." Warren smiled, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Me too, Sophie. Me too. Josie is my best friend forever, my soul sister. I know, and I'm grateful for that." Sophie closed her eyes, smiling. Warren kissed her forehead and left the room. He went down the stairs and to his office. He sat in the leather chair and looked out the window. The night was clear, full of bright stars. Warren thought about everything that had happened since that day. It started with boredom, with an impulsive decision to change his route, with a girl in a park playing with stones, and it ended with a complete transformation. With true friendship, with love, with purpose. He hadn't saved the whole world. He hadn't solved poverty. He hadn't cured all injustices. But he had changed the world for two people. He had given Diana hope. He had given Josie joy and a future. He had taught Sophie the values that truly matter, and in the process, he had saved himself. Warren closed his eyes and smiled, grateful. Because sometimes, it all starts with a little girl who just wanted food, a girl who preferred to feed her mother than to get an expensive doll, a girl who showed that true wealth is not in the things you own, but in the heart you cultivate. And it ended with a man who finally learned to care. He learned that having money means nothing if you don't use it to do good, that true success is in making a difference in someone's life, that life is only worth living when you care. Warren didn't save the world, but he changed the world for two people, and his own as well. And sometimes that's all that matters, because it all started with a girl who just wanted food, and a man who finally learned to care. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.